Hey, this is Braydon with Pickleball Effect. Today we're taking a look at a new series from Selkirk. This is their Vanguard Power Air series. So Selkirk has been putting a lot of effort into their research and development of these paddles. They have their new program they're calling Selkirk Labs. As part of that program, they developed a paddle they're calling 002. Tyson McGuffin has been playing with it for a long time. A lot of the technologies they developed for that paddle has been implemented into this paddle with some of the feedback that they got in the development process of the 002. So let's start with the hole in the throat. When you compare this hole to the one in the 002, it's bigger and it's closer to the handle. So there's a couple of things that this does for you. It does make the paddle a little more aerodynamic, but it also gives the paddle more of a trampoline effect, which is going to add power and potentially a little more spin. So that's the hole in the throat. And then they made some changes to the edge. So there is no edge guard. This is an edgeless design. They're not the first brand to make an edgeless design, but I do love that they're going in this direction. The edge guard is usually the part of the paddle that breaks down first. So this is going to make the paddle a lot more durable. So it's good to see that they're going in this direction, and I bet a lot of brands are going to follow and mimic this. So sticking with the edge of the paddle, they also inserted some foam around the perimeter, which is going to add some weight to the head, make it a little more forgiving and add a little more power. Yola has a similar technology they did with the Ben Johns Hyperion paddle. However, the Ben Johns paddle is super heavy. This one is not near as heavy as the Ben Johns. When I put it on my scale, it came in just under 8 ounces. And then talking about the facing material, they have 4 layers of material on each side of the paddle. They have 2 layers of fiberglass and 2 layers of carbon fiber. So the fiberglass is going to give you a little more pop, and then the carbon fiber is going to help add some control to the paddle. So a little blend of facing materials there. And then when you feel the face, it is gritty to the touch. It has a sandpapery feel. Paddles I've played in the past that have a sandpapery feel tend to wear out pretty quickly. So that's something I'll pay attention to in my play test. And then last thing I'll mention is the handle. It has an octagonal shape. If you look at it, you'll notice that the handle is kind of built into the frame of the paddle. It's very comfortable, and I like what they did there. So they're gonna offer these paddles with the same shapes they've had for a while. This is the Epic. I also have the Invikta with me, so I'll be playing with both of these. This is a classic shape, while this one is elongated. So they'll have some performance differences that I'll be looking for and paying attention to in the play test and share with you. So here's the Vanguard Power Airs. Let's go put them on the court and see how they play. After drilling and playing with the paddles over the course of 3 weeks, here's my review of their performance. I'll first talk about the shared characteristics of the paddles and then break down the differences between the two shapes at the end. So true to their name, these are power paddles. They have high power and spin ratings that rank them near the top of both of those categories. Though you can generate plenty of power, the ball doesn't feel jumpy off the face like some other power paddles I've played. Instead, it just responds really well when you put a bigger swing on it. This attribute made the paddle a weapon when attacking, but also helped out when you needed to slow the ball down. Along with the high power and spin ratings, they were also very maneuverable. The paddles fall into the midweight category at about 8 ounces, but they're a bit headlight and feel lighter than they actually are. The hole in the throat, edgeless design, and headlight weight all contributed to making the paddle faster in your hands. This gave the paddles a level of power, spin, and maneuverability that I don't think I've experienced with another paddle. This 3-pronged combination enables your offense in a lot of ways. It seemed to have it all when you wanted to attack and put pressure on your opponents. My drives, serves, returns, and speed-ups were all a bit more effective with the extra spin and power, while the maneuverability was great with hands battles and counters. It didn't really have any drawbacks here. Let's talk about the soft game now. This part of the paddle is interesting. They didn't have a familiar feel to them and even sounded different. Give them a listen. The best way I can describe how they feel is like a light wooden paddle. It's not plush. Though I didn't like how they felt with my first hits, I do what I always do and play with the paddles for at least 2 weeks before I form my complete opinion. So about a week and a half of playing with these nearly every day, my opinion of how they felt changed. I got used to their feel and really didn't mind it so much as I did when I first hit them, but I never quite fell in love with how they felt. I socialized these paddles with a lot of different people and got varying opinions. Some liked it and some didn't. Though I personally didn't like how the paddles felt out the gate, I was actually controlling the ball pretty well after only a couple of days of playing with them. However, these are power paddles, so they're harder to control in general because of the extra power, but I surprisingly felt connected to them and was hitting my drops, dinks, and resets pretty well. Higher level players that I shared the paddle with all had similar experiences where they picked up their soft game much quicker than I thought they would. If you already have a sense of touch, then I think you could dial these in, even if you don't particularly like its unique harder feeling. The ball isn't bouncy off the face, and it doesn't have a hot spot, which makes taking pace off the ball easier. This wasn't the same story for some 4.0s and other lower level players. If someone I shared the paddle with didn't have a well-developed soft game, or if they were coming from a control-focused paddle, then they were popping more balls up than they normally would. The biggest drawback to the ability of these paddles was their medium-sized sweet spot. I'm a 4-5 player and the size of the sweet spot didn't bother me much, but when I shared the paddle with intermediate to lower level players, the smaller sweet spot caused more unforced errors. Although they had tighter sweet spots, I didn't notice any vibration from mishits or anything like that. Thinner core paddles aren't going to be as stable as thicker 16mm paddles, but these were more stable compared to other thinner core paddles I've played. Okay, let's talk about the differences between the two shapes. The Epic has a noticeably larger sweet spot compared to the Invikta, which made it more player friendly. The Epic also felt faster in my hands, but had a little less power. The Invikta obviously gives you more reach, but its smaller sweet spot makes the paddle more demanding. It did give you some additional power and spin though. Of the two shapes, I personally preferred the Epic because I thought the benefits of the bigger sweet spot outweighed the benefits of the extra reach. If you're an advanced player, then picking which shape you want is a matter of preference. But if you like the idea of this paddle and are in that 4.0 range, then the Epic may be the better choice here. A couple of other things to consider are that the edges of the paddle get scratched really easily, so you'll want some sort of protective edge guard tape. And in regards to the grit, despite it feeling like sandpaper, it didn't wear out in the first week of play like other sandpapery type surfaces I played. There was still plenty of grit after 3 weeks of my play test. I do have friends who've been playing with the Air longer than I have, closer to probably 2 months, and their paddles are starting to get smooth. So the grit doesn't last forever, but I'm glad to see that it is lasting as long as it does. So here's my recommendation. The highlight of these paddles for me was their high level of power, spin, and maneuverability. That's a winning combo in my book for a power paddle. They do have an unpleasant feel, though I was able to control the ball anyway. If you're able to try the paddles out and don't like the feel initially, I suggest playing with the paddle for at least 2 weeks before you decide if it's the right paddle for you or not. Although the feel is different, the power, spin, and speed of these paddles are very enticing. This is a true power paddle, so its extra pop and medium-sized sweet spot doesn't help your soft game, and it will cause some unforced errors if you don't have a developed touch already. So that's everything I have for you. Thanks for watching, and I hope it helped.